Far beyond Camelot, the northern peaks rise, jagged, mist-shrouded mountains untouched by men where ancient magic hums in the air. Here, in hidden caverns and stormy skies, the legendary dragon Frederick reigns, a silent guardian in a world where nature's power dwarfs all else. Frederick the Emerald Dragon was once Camelot's ally, a wise, gentle force who shaped rivers, calmed storms, and protected the land. His legend endures as a memory of a time when dragons and men built kingdoms together, his presence woven into the very foundation of Camelot. As centuries passed, Frederick's deeds faded into myth. His name spoken only in stories for children and travellers. Yet, a prophecy lingered. In Camelot's darkest hour, the dragon would return, a forgotten protector waiting for the kingdom's call. Unseen, Frederick watched from the peaks, quietly warding off ancient evils and maintaining the balance between magic and the world of men. Sensing a new creeping darkness, he knew the time was near when Camelot would need its guardian once more. A chilling gloom settled over Camelot. Fields lay fallow, laughter faded, and fear crept through the kingdom as an unseen threat grew. King Arthur, feeling the weight of this shadow, sensed that the hour foretold in legend was fast approaching. A shadow crept across the kingdom. Monstrous creatures, twisted abominations emerged from the misty forests, spreading terror and chaos. Camelot's bravest knights rode out, but their valor and steel could not defeat these unnatural foes. Even the wisdom of Merlin's apprentices failed to uncover the source of this dark magic. Each attack planted seeds of doubt. Was Camelot's golden age ending? On a cold, moonless night, King Arthur stood alone atop Camelot's wall, his heart heavy with worry. The kingdom suffered, villages raided, fields blighted, his people haunted by fear. Arthur, once a symbol of hope, now felt powerless against a darkness he could not fight. In the silence, Merlin joined him, sharing the weight of despair and the hope for light to return. For a long moment the two men stood as statues of stone, king and wizard, united in their shared concern for the kingdom they had built together. The wind whispered around the turrets, carrying with it the scent of distant rain and the faint, unsettling chill of the troubled lands. Finally, Merlin broke the silence, his voice low and steady, a stark contrast to the swirling uncertainty in the air. "The darkness grows deeper, my king," he stated, not as a report, but as an acknowledgement of the truth they both knew. The old ways are failing us. Steel cannot cut shadows, and our spells find no purchase on this new evil. Arthur let out a long, weary sigh, the sound barely audible above the wind. "I know, Merlin. I have sent my best knights, and they have fallen. I have consulted our wisest minds, and they are baffled. What are we to do? It feels as if we are fighting a tide with our bare hands. Every day the fear spreads. Camelot is strong, but I fear its spirit is beginning to break." He turned his gaze from the dark horizon to face the ancient wizard, his eyes pleading for an answer, for any sliver of hope that he himself could no longer find. His face, usually a mask of kingly resolve, was etched with fatigue and frustration. A strange, almost imperceptible glint of light appeared in Merlin's deep-set eyes, a flicker of something ancient and powerful. It was the look he got when his mind was reaching far back, beyond the memory of living men, into the annals of forgotten ages. There are powers older than Camelot, Arthur. Alliances forged when this kingdom was but a dream in your father's mind, he said, his voice taking on a resonant, almost mystical quality. When the enemy is one of ancient and unnatural magic, we must seek aid from an ally of equal or even greater antiquity. The time has come, Your Majesty. Merlin paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the cold night air. He extended a gnarled hand, not towards the troubled lands of the kingdom, but northward, towards the unseen, formidable peaks that loomed in the distance. We must seek the aid of an ancient guardian, one who has not been called upon in many, many years. We must look to the mountains. The wizard's words hung there, a sudden unexpected key turning in a lock that Arthur had long forgotten even existed. It was a name from a legend, a story from his childhood, a whisper of impossible power. Arthur turned to Merlin, memories of childhood legends flooding back. Tales of a wise dragon, guardian of the north. He questioned if Frederick the dragon was real, and if he could save their kingdom. Merlin's certainty was unwavering. Frederick was their only hope. Though the path was perilous, Arthur's resolve returned. At dawn, they would seek the dragon's aid, one final chance to save the realm. At dawn, a small, determined company gathered in Camelot's courtyard. The air was cold, breath pluming from man and horse alike. King Arthur stood at their head, renewed and resolute, Excalibur sheathed at his side. He had chosen his companions for courage and loyalty, not rank. Merlin, in simple robes, stood beside him, eyes fixed on the distant mountains. Few in number, their spirit was formidable. Without fanfare they rode out, venturing into the unknown, into legend. Leaving Camelot's familiar fields, Arthur and his knights entered a wild, brooding land. The road faded to a muddy track, hedgerows giving way to tangled thickets and ancient watchful trees. The shadow over the kingdom was palpable here, the silence unnatural. Merlin led them through forgotten trails, his quiet confidence a comfort as they pressed deeper into the unknown. At night, the campfire's glow pushed back the darkness, but could not dispel the sense of unseen eyes watching from the wild. The travellers entered the ancient westwood, a forest shrouded in mist and legend. Beneath the dense canopy, sunlight faded, and a greenish gloom filled the air. The silence was broken only by the soft thud of hooves and the drip of moisture from above. This was no ordinary forest, its air heavy with memory and slumbering magic. The nights felt like intruders watched by ancient trees. Whispers drifted through the mist, echoes of the past and warnings of a growing darkness. Emerging from the westward, the party faced a new obstacle. A wide, churning river, its grey waters swirling with sorrow and despair. Its steep, treacherous banks offered no easy crossing, and the current was too strong to swim. This was the river grief, a test of both body and spirit. At last, Merlin found a petrified tree spanning the gorge, a narrow, mossy bridge above the raging water. One by one they crossed, hearts pounding, into a land even more alien and hostile beyond. Having conquered the River of Sorrows, the landscape changed. Rolling hills gave way to a stark, windswept moorland rising toward jagged mountains. The wind howled from the peaks, carrying echoes and strange sounds, a prelude to the power ahead. It was a sound that spoke of dragons, myth made real. The knights pressed on, courage mixed with apprehension. Merlin listened to the wind. "He knows we are coming," he said. Their journey was not in vain. Frederick was real and waiting. The moorland gave way to the rugged foothills of the northern peaks, where the path grew steep and the air turned cold. The mountains loomed above, casting a permanent shadow and making the travellers feel small. Each step was a struggle, the silence broken only by wind and laboured breaths. Signs of the dragons' battles, charred bones and claw marks, marked their way. They realized they sought not a saviour but an ally, equals in a fight for their home. The final leg of their journey was the most perilous of all. The path they followed wound its way up the side of the highest peak, a spire of black rock that seemed to pierce the heavens. The air was thin and freezing, and flurries of snow began to swirl around them, carried on the biting wind. They had to leave their horses behind in a sheltered alcove, the animals too weary and the path too dangerous for them to continue. From here, they would proceed on foot. The final ascent to the dragon's lair was a challenge that man had to face alone, stripped of all but his own courage and determination. The path became less a path and more a series of narrow, ice-slicked ledges and steep hand-over-hand climbs. Every step required their full concentration. A single misstep would mean a fall of thousands of feet into the mists that churned in the ravines below. The world had shrunk to the next handhold, the next secure footing. The sheer physical exertion was immense, but it served to focus their minds, pushing away the fear and doubt. They moved as a single unit, Lancelot taking the lead to test the way, Bors helping to secure ropes, and Arthur providing the unwavering resolve that drove them all forward. As they neared the summit, they felt a change in the air. A warmth began to radiate from the rock ahead, a deep, primal heat that melted the ice from the ledges and pushed back the mountain's chill. A low, rhythmic rumbling sound grew stronger, a sound like a colossal heartbeat or the slow breathing of a sleeping volcano. A faint emerald light began to pulse from a vast opening in the cliff face just ahead, casting strange dancing shadows on the swirling snow. They had arrived. This was the entrance to Frederick's lair, the heart of the mountain, the final destination of their long and desperate quest. They paused at the entrance, a massive cave-like opening large enough for a dozen horses to ride through abreast. They stood there, catching their breath, their quest-worn figures silhouetted against the ethereal green glow from within. They exchanged final determined glances. All their trials, the blighted lands, the whispering woods, the sorrowful river and the treacherous climb, had led them to this single moment. Steeling their nerves, Arthur took the first step, leading his companions out of the blizzard and into the dragon's cavern, ready to face the legend and the fate of their kingdom. The adventurers stepped from the biting cold into a cavern of warmth and ancient power. Emerald light pulsed ahead, casting long shadows as the ground rumbled beneath their feet. At the heart of the vast chamber, Frederick the Dragon awaited, awake, immense and magnificent beyond legend. In that moment, they were not heroes, just mortals before a god of stone and fire. Frederick, immense and coiled upon the obsidian dais, watched them with a quiet, unnerving stillness. His emerald scales shimmered with 1,000 living shades, pulsing with an inner light. A crown of jet-black horns swept back from his brow. His eyes, twin pools of molten emerald, gleamed with ancient intelligence. The air hummed with power, the ground trembling with each slow heartbeat, yet his presence was calm, like the mountain itself, ancient and still. Arthur stepped forward, meeting the dragon's gaze with all the courage he could summon. Merlin stepped forward, hands open in peace, bowing his head beside Arthur. Frederick, ancient guardian, shifted his great head, scales shimmering. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like thunder and earth, yet his words were clear. "I have long awaited this day, Merlin. Darkness threatens your land." His gaze turned to Arthur, weighing the king's spirit and hope. In the mountain's heart, only truth remained. Frederick's gaze lingered on Arthur, not with judgment, but with a profound, almost weary understanding. "You seek my fire to burn away monsters, believing strength alone will restore peace. But the creatures you face are only symptoms, puppets of a deeper, ancient hunger. The true source lies in the blighted swamps to the southeast, where the veil between worlds is thin and darkness festers, twisting all it touches." Arthur found his resolve again, as the dragon's words gave their enemy form, and hope began to glow brighter. "Will you help us, mighty Frederick? Name your price." The dragon rumbled, "Your treasures are worthless to me, king of men. My price is not gold, but a true alliance. Camelot's fate is now tied to mine. Swear this, and you have my aid." Arthur stood before the immense dragon, the weight of the creature's condition settling upon him. This was far more than he had anticipated. Frederick was not offering his services as a weapon to be wielded and then sent back to the mountains. He was offering a permanent, binding partnership, a fundamental shift in the relationship between his kingdom and the world of ancient magic. It was a pact that would forever change Camelot's destiny, tying its future to the will of this ancient, powerful being. He saw the hesitation in the eyes of his knights behind him, the sheer gravity of what was being asked of them. He thought of his kingdom, of the blighted fields and the terrified villagers. He thought of the unseen enemy, the puppeteer in the swamps, a threat far greater than he had imagined. He realized Frederick was right. Winning a single battle was not enough. The world was changing, and the old ways of thinking, the focus on walls and borders, were no longer sufficient. To survive, Camelot had to reawaken to the deeper magic of the world, for good and for ill. It needed to remember the old pacts, not as myths, but as living, breathing responsibilities. This was not a price. It was a necessary evolution. With his mind made up, Arthur took another step forward, closing the distance between himself and the great dragon. He looked up into those vast emerald eyes, and he did not see a monster or a beast, but a wise, ancient sovereign of a different kind of kingdom. He saw an ally. Arthur placed a gauntleted hand over his heart, a gesture of the most solemn vow a knight of Camelot could make. His voice, when he spoke, did not waver. It rang with the conviction of a king who has seen the true path forward for his people and is willing to walk it no matter the cost. "I accept your condition, Frederick, guardian of the balance," Arthur declared, his words echoing with a profound finality. "On my honor as King of Camelot and on behalf of all my people, I pledge this to you. We will not simply be your allies in this single battle, but partners in the long war for the soul of this land. Your fight is our fight. We will stand together, man and dragon, against the darkness. We will learn from your wisdom and lend you our strength. Camelot and the dragons will fight as one, now and for all the days to come. You have my solemn vow." In the glowing cavern, Arthur's vow was met with silence, then acceptance. Frederick, the ancient dragon, lowered his head, and the king stood firm, forging a bond of trust. An alliance was sealed, dragon and man united. Emerald light filled the cave, hope and strength returning to Arthur, Merlin, and the knights. Together they faced the darkness, no longer alone, as a new dawn rose for Camelot. The pact was sealed not with ink and parchment, but with a vow spoken in the heart of the world and a touch that bridged two ages. Arthur and his companions had sought a weapon, but found a partner in Frederick, the ancient dragon. "The time for words is done," the dragon's voice rumbled. "The shadow in the south does not wait. We must move with the swiftness of a striking falcon." Their fear became respect, their allegiance sworn to a new alliance, man and dragon united against the coming darkness. The knights emerged from the mountain, greeted by a breathtaking sunrise over Camelot's lands. Frederick the Emerald Dragon appeared behind them, his scales shining in the dawn. "Now you will ride the wind," he rumbled, inviting the knights onto his back. With a mighty leap they soared into the sky. Camelot spread out below, a new dawn, a new hope. The news of the king's return swept through Camelot, but it was the manner of his return that left all speechless. A colossal dragon soared above the city, not as a threat but with majestic grace. Upon its back rode King Arthur, Merlin, and the lost knights, alive and unharmed. Arthur declared, "People of Camelot, fear not, this is Frederick, our new ally." In that moment, hope dawned, and the kingdom's fear gave way to wonder. Frederick's arrival in Camelot changed everything. The dragon's presence turned fear into hope, as villagers gathered to witness the living legend. Frederick became a symbol of power and renewal, his wisdom and strength uniting the kingdom. No longer feared, he was welcomed as Camelot's greatest friend and protector. The respite in Camelot, though vital for restoring the kingdom's spirit, was destined to be brief. The true enemy, the puppeteer lurking in the southern swamps, remained a potent threat. The alliance was not forged for defense alone, but for a decisive strike against the heart of the darkness. With Frederick's guidance and the renewed vigor of Camelot's knights, a plan was formed. A new quest was declared, one far more ambitious and dangerous than the journey to the northern peaks. They would march south, into the dreaded blighted marshes, and confront the source of the corruption head-on, to end its threat once and for all. This time there was no quiet, secret departure. The entire kingdom gathered to witness the beginning of the great expedition. At the head of the column was King Arthur, his armour gleaming, his resolve absolute. Beside him rode Merlin, his staff held high, a symbol of the magic that now openly stood with them. And behind them marched the full might of the Knights of the Round Table, their banners snapping proudly in the wind, their faces grim but filled with a courage born of their newfound hope. They were no longer a small, desperate party, but a confident army marching to reclaim the soul of their world. As the army marched out from the great gates, a shadow fell over them. But this was not a shadow of fear. It was a shadow of power and protection. High above, Frederick soared, his immense wings carrying him effortlessly on the wind. He was their vanguard, their ultimate weapon, and their wisest scout. His presence in the sky was a declaration to all, friend and foe alike, that Camelot's strength was now magnified 100-fold. The cheers of the people followed them, a roar of hope and support that echoed across the plains. a sound that had been absent from the kingdom for far too long. Their journey had just begun, but this was a new beginning. The first adventure, the quest for Frederick, was merely the prologue to a much grander saga. The challenges ahead would be immense. The blighted marshes were a place of ancient evil, and the entity that dwelled there was a foe of unimaginable power. There would be battles, losses, and tests of their courage and their new alliance. But they faced it together, a united front of man, magic, and dragon. They were no longer just defending their kingdom, they were fighting for the future of their world, and their legend was only just starting to be written. The path south was a stark illustration of the stakes. The further they travelled from the protective aura of Camelot and Frederick's immediate presence, the more twisted and corrupted the land became. They entered regions where the sky was a permanent, sickly yellow, and the very air was thick with the stench of decay. The monsters they encountered here were more numerous and more grotesque, as if they were closer to the source of their mutation. But now the Knights of Camelot did not falter. They met these horrors with disciplined steel, while from the sky above, devastating plumes of emerald fire cleansed the land of the most formidable threats. Frederick's wisdom proved indispensable. He could sense the currents of dark magic, allowing them to anticipate ambushes and avoid the most heavily corrupted areas. He could speak with the ancient trees and the spirits of the rivers, gathering intelligence that no human scout could ever hope to uncover. He told them of the enemy's nature, a being that thrives on despair and feeds on decay, a creature that twists life because it cannot create life of its own. He explained that their own hope and courage were weapons just as potent as their swords, for such light was anathema to the shadow they hunted. The journey was a crucible that tested and strengthened the new alliance. The knights learned to fight in concert with their draconic ally, coordinating ground and air attacks with remarkable efficiency. Lancelot would lead a charge to draw out a beast, while Frederick descended from the clouds to strike it from behind. Galahad would use his pure spirit to create wards of protection that the dragon's fire would not cross, safeguarding his comrades. They were becoming a seamless fighting force, their trust in one another absolute, forged in the heat of constant battle against the horrors of the blighted land. But their enemy was not idle. As they drew closer to the marshes, the resistance grew more cunning. The puppeteer was aware of their approach and was beginning to adapt. They faced not just mindless beasts, but devious traps, illusions that preyed on their fears, and whispers on the wind that sought to sow doubt and discord among them. They were entering the heart of the enemy's power, a domain where its control was nearly absolute. The initial battles had been won, but they all knew the true war. The final confrontation for the fate of their world was still to come, waiting for them in the stagnant, poisoned heart of the swamp. Thus, the legend of Frederick, the great dragon of the northern peaks, was not an ending, but a new and thrilling beginning. The old tale of a sleeping guardian who would return in Camelot's darkest hour had been fulfilled, but in its fulfillment it had transformed into something far greater. It was no longer a story of a savior descending to solve a single crisis, but the epic saga of a partnership, a permanent bond between the world of men and the ancient world of magic. The dragon was not a temporary fix, but a constant presence, a wise counselor, and a powerful friend who would stand with Camelot through all the trials to come. The journey into the blighted marshes was but the first chapter of this new saga. More challenges awaited them, hinted at in Frederick's ancient knowledge and Merlin's cryptic prophecies. There were other wounds in the world, other forgotten places where darkness gathered. There were unseen enemies to be faced and lost allies to be found. Their quest to restore the balance was not a single task, but a lifelong commitment, a grand adventure that would take them to the farthest corners of the realm and beyond. The Fellowship of the Round Table had expanded to include a member of unimaginable power, and their mission had expanded with it. Camelot would thrive once more, not just under the protection of its knights, but under the watchful emerald eyes of its legendary defender. The kingdom would become a beacon of hope in a world threatened by encroaching shadows, its strength drawn from the unique union of human courage and draconic might. The tale of their alliance would be told for generations, a story to inspire hope in the darkest of times, a reminder that even when all seems lost, help can come from the most unexpected and magical of places. The world was larger and more wondrous than they had ever believed, and so their journey continues. The battles ahead will be fierce, the stakes higher than ever before, and the darkness they face more profound. But they will face it together, united by their unwavering purpose, to defend the light, to protect the balance, and to ensure that peace and prosperity can flourish in their world. The legend of Frederick had not ended with his return. It had been reborn, stronger and brighter than ever. And the greatest adventures of King Arthur, the wizard Merlin and Frederick, the dragon of the northern peaks, had only just begun.